Hey guys, back with a new video, and today we'll be going over the metagame recap on Vancouver Regionals, which just ended this weekend, and Lunala won. And not just Lunala, Roaring Moon, Landers, Orgapon Ursh won, which is really cool to see because it was actually inspired by our San Antonio winning team. So really cool to see that one here, and also Lunala winning is also really cool. I actually almost brought Lunala to last year Worlds, so having two ideas that I was also working on win a regional is pretty cool to see. And this was a crazy regional. Like scrolling down a bit, Hard Trick Room was in finals, Specs Pagos in top 4, Manshao in 5th place, Korai Ditto in 8th, and plenty of more weird teams and cool innovations this tournament. So in today's video, we'll be going, of course, over all the top cut teams that I have recreated today, and we'll also go over some teams outside the cut afterwards. But of course, we need to start off with Nala. So Bezad, a more newer player around in VGC. This is his first regional win, and he won with a very similar comp that I used at San Antonio, with that Aurora Moon Heartflame Ursh combo. Except the main difference here is he paired it with Indeedee and Lunala. So having a more side spam element to the team, which I find really cool. Indeedee being able to block priority for Urshifu is quite nice. Being able to boost up expanding force for Lunala, make that spread move as well, is really strong. I think this is a really cool call for the tournament because in his interview he was talking about he was expecting that there would be less Rillaboom in the format for Vancouver. He said that this team might not have worked at London because balance teams tend to do as well, and for most part he was right. There's very little Rillaboom in that top cut we saw. We saw a bunch of Miraidon and Koraidon and such, where he was able to beat in that top 8 and top 4, and then he was also able to beat Ice Rider in finals, which I think Lunala actually has a pretty good matchup versus with that Terra Water. Spreads are pretty straightforward for the most part. He actually posted his rental code in Pace, so I was able to get the EVs from his rental code here. Lunala here is just max special attack, very little speed. I mean, Lunala, the whole purpose of Lunala, right, is you can work in Tail Room, similar to Ice Rider, right? 118 means you outspeed basically everything you need in Tail One, and you underspeed everything that you need in Trick Room, basically. You underspeed Ursh, stuff like that, and you outspeed Ursh in Tail One. So pretty cool, that aspect. Indeedee, they always go standard bold. Indeedee's defense is quite bad, so having that defense to live the hits you need is quite nice from stuff like Incineroar or Urshifu. One neat thing is actually a Lurin Voice. Normally you see Psychic or Dazzling Gleam, but Lurin Voice has that 100% chance to confuse a target after a stat raise, so you'll be able to confuse stuff like Shadow Rider if they get Nasty Pot off or that AS1 boost off, and stuff like that. Heartflame, this set is really interesting because it's actually just the San Antonio EVs, but he was Jolly for some reason. I'm not so sure why he was Jolly. I actually believe he was actually Woodhammer as well, not Hornleech. So another interesting tech. Woodhammer I guess makes more sense if you're going Jolly to outspeed and KO Urshifu. But one thing to note is that even with Jolly, with the same EV spread I had in San Antonio, it only hits 146. So I'm guessing that with Jolly, he's just speed creeping the other Ogre Pawns that are also impish and stuff like that. You're also outspeeding stuff like Smeargle and Maz Pagos still. But if you are going Jolly, I feel like you should be going faster than this. And I feel like the EV spread could be more optimized, but it kind of just shows how strong this Pokemon is, where even if you're not outspeeding things that you maybe probably should, I guess, with Jolly, you can still do really well, because the rest of the pieces of the team is still very strong. This is probably really the only question with EV spread. I think the rest were I understood, but again, I'll link his Twitter and stuff, and maybe be worth asking questions about why the Ogerpon was Jolly here. Roaring Moon, this is the standard booster energy set. This one is a lot more offensive than the one I had. I was a bit slower Roaring Moon and a bit more defensive. I think going max speed makes sense if you'll be faster than Mirror, and having more attack to get more Chaos Acrobatics also makes a lot of sense. So I think that this spread here makes a lot of sense for Roaring Moon. Urshifu, the main thing to note is that this is Focus Sash instead of Mystic Water, so you go standard max attack, max speed, and Jet. You don't really need Jet on this one because Close Combat makes more sense for Lunala to remove stuff like Tropicos, which would give a hard time for Lunala. And also because your Psychic Terrain means you can't click your priority, so no Jet makes sense here. Landorus, he opted for Terra Poison instead of Terra Water. I think Terra Poison also makes sense. There's nothing wrong with Terra Poison because you have that boost from the Sludge Bomb. You also have some key resistances, stuff like Rillaboom, which is a bigger problem than for the Ice Rider team because you have Indeedee and Lunala, which are a bit weaker to Rilla. The Sludge Bomb to maybe KO Rillaboom is quite nice. And also, the main note is the bulk. I ran a very bulky Landorus, but this is a even bulkier Landorus. No speed Lando means you're going to be underspeeding a lot of things in Trick Room still, and still be outspeeding things you want in Tailwind. But the bulk here, I did some calcs. I wasn't sure what it was for exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was to live Timid Draco in Psychic Terrain. It's around a 20% chance to KO you instead of 100% chance. So I think that's pretty cool. You become surprised. A lot of people will be surprised. Bulk, like at San Antonio, I was able to surprise one of my opponents by living like an Overheater GU, for example. So like bulky Landorus is very, very strong. And I think that this Tail Room core applies to Lunala and Ice Rider. But I think the combination of Lando, Ursh, and Heartflame has so much success now. And I think it can be thrown on a lot of different teams. So it's really cool to see this core work again here. Second place is definitely another surprising team. Vancouver having Lunala winning was also surprising, but having hard Trick Room in finals of a regional is something we don't see often. And it's not just regular hard Trick Room, it's Imprison Ice Rider. A lot of Ice Riders, they run Protect over an Imprison slot, but Imprison basically means you almost auto-win the mirror. We saw Imprison do a lot of work for Alejandro in top 8, where he's able to beat Ian. And basically when Imprison shut down the Ice Rider, he was able to win the game on the spot, basically. The EVs for Hard Trick Room are very straightforward. I was looking at stream sets, and I'm pretty sure he was just max everything. The Hattering was 252 HP, and Ice Rider is 252 HP. I believe he was also Brave Nature because Ian's Ice Rider kept outspeeding him. Sometimes you can consider running faster in Prison for the mirror, but on Ian's team, I don't think he needed to run a super fast Ice Rider, so I had a feeling that this Ice Rider that Alejandro had was probably just min speed. Indeedee again, 2 Indeedees in finals is kind of funny, but they do the same thing. Just have Follow Me to set up Trick Room, or to set up the Psychic Terrain to have that strong expanding forces. In this case for Alejandro, it's Hattering, which is a Pokemon we don't see often anymore, but actually has a pretty cool niche in the metagame where it is good versus Amoonguss. It can take advantage of Indeedee. Magic Bounce to, again, block Spore, maybe block Will-O-Wisp for Calyrex is quite nice. Smeargle is a Pokemon we've been seeing a little bit more nowadays. I think Smeargle did really well as well on Kali Shadow team this weekend. And it's a really good partner for Ice Rider as well because you have that Fake Out, Spore, and Decorate combo. With Smeargle, you can't predict what it can do on turn 1 basically, so it can do anything it wants, right? We saw in top 4 that this Smeargle was actually faster than Specs Pagos, so that made me automatically assume that it was not a slow Decorate set, but more of a fast Spore set. We didn't see much of the Gallade, but we did see in top 4. Gallade on a team like this is just to hit the fighting types. Not fighting types. With that fighting types, you hit the dark types that Hattering can't really hit with E-Force, and you can also remove Incineroar a lot easier for it. And that in Calorie Ice. Upper hand's cool tech for Rillaboom. Be able to upper hand Fake Out in terrain is quite nice. And Psychic Seed is basically just here instead of that Clear Amulet because Clear, of course, is an Ice Rider. Torkoal, Choice Specs, your standard set. Torkoal on these teams are either Charcoal or Choice Specs, so you want max on this. Very standard EVs, but for Hard Trick Room, you kind of just out damage most of your opponents. Very aggressive team, and you don't really need any fancy EVs for Hard Trick Room. Chase, this is a variant, I think, of the Riley Factora Miraidon, very similar. I know Riley had Miraidon, Ursaluna, and Wims, very similar. The only difference was there was an Iron Crown instead of Fergaraf. But yeah, double normal is really strong versus Kali Shadow. James Baek actually lost to him in top 8, and he was saying that the double normal plus AV Instant gave him a really hard time for the Kali Shadow. Miraidon, I just went with the standard Lucas Charabelli spread. I think for Miraidon, you can go your standard spread with anything you want. I just went with the standard one here with Lucas. You can also go max be timid if you want to be better in the mirror. You can also go max HP, which is adaptation that did really well at London. So feel free to experiment with that. Urshifu Focus Sash, it's always going to be max. Ursaluna, because it's just Tailwind, I figured it was going to be fast. I gave it 188 speed to outspeed Moss Miraidon in Tailwind. But realistically, that Ursaluna could also be a slow Trick Room abuser. It might have min speed as well. Again, feel free to experiment with that. Ensign, I just gave it enough speed to outspeed Ogrepon and Tailwind. Gave it enough attack just to hit that second bump. Enough with def to have that AV value. And yeah, Adamant Instant is usually the preferred set on Assault Vest because you already have that bulk from AV and Intimidate, so you might as well go all out on the offense. Whimsicott is your standard set. They're usually either Terra Dark or Terra Water nowadays, and this is just the spread that Luca won Worlds with. Alex with Specs Pagos. We saw the Ogre Pawn on stream was Impish. It was able to take 2 Glacial Lances, so you need Impish for that. So I just went with my San Antonio spread. Urshifu here, your standard focus session, of course. Pagos, also very standard for Specs. They usually just go max Modest, just to move fast and hit as hard as possible. Whimsicott on these teams, again, they run the same 4 moves always. Light Skin from a Ride-On, Tailwind to make the Pagos be faster. This one's actually up for Terra Water, which I think is better for Kali Ice. Trigraph here is also not a mon we see often on Specs Pagos. I think that most of them usually run like Chi Flutter or like Smeargle and such, but I like Trigraph a lot on these teams because it blocks Fake Out, which Pagos is not a fan of. And Landorus here I think is a good addition as well, because it's also really good at hitting Zamazenta, which Pagos is not very friendly, or Zamazenta is not very, very good versus Pagos, I mean. And yeah, this team is actually a very old team. I'm actually kind of surprised to see it do super well. But Alex has been playing this team for a long time. This team won a Victory Road Tour that actually covered, one of the first videos I had on this channel was actually on this team. But yeah, a very early team in the beginning of Reg G 2.0, but it was able to convert really well because Alex has been playing this team for a very long time. I actually helped him coached him on it a while back, and he pulled his matchups. He pulled 0 Zamazenta, he pulled 1 Koraidon, and everything else he outplayed, and he got top 4 with it. So yeah, really impressive, but also kind of shows that you know, if you pull your matchups and you're playing as well, you can have a far run with any team. So really cool to see Specs Pagos shine in a metagame where I think Combine Pagos was dominating for the most part towards the end of Reg G so far. Next is James Baek, and James Baek had a really interesting variant of Kali Shadow. It's Kali Shadow Clefairy, which we have seen before in the past, but this one has up for Terra Fairy with no Draining Kiss. Which I think makes a lot of sense because Draining Kiss is kind of weak on its own, and Psychic is, you know, it is Stab without the Terra. And a spread like this, I made it Timid to outspeed Timid Miraidon. In his stream interview, he mentioned that he was out underspeeding most Shadow Rider in mirrors, so I knew he wasn't max speed, but he said he was faster than James Evans. So I think this is a good mid ground. He could also be modest, but I think Timid makes a lot of sense for Shadow Rider mirrors as well. If you don't want to go all at max speed, outspeeding Timid Miraidon I think is the bare minimum at that point. 180 and 84 defense. I believe this lives Surging in Rain with Clefairy, or Terra Water Surging in Rain with Clefairy as well. And then the rest I just threw the rest in special attack. A Clefairy, very standard set. I just went max HP and max defense to take as many physical hits as possible. The main thing to note about this Clefairy is that there's no help in hand, which you normally see on these Clefairy teams, or after you Sing. James has actually opted for Icy Wind and Heal Pulse. So Icy Wind's a really good form of speed control, which I think a lot of these Clef Shadow Rider teams lack. And the Heal Pulse is really good at healing up your Pokemon because you don't have Draining Kiss a Shadow Rider, so you can Heal Pulse your Kali. You can also Heal Pulse the rest of your team. On stream, he was able to heal Pulse his Rillaboom back to full HP versus James Evans to win in the mirror, which is really cool. Rillaboom, actually, like, it's actually funny. This Shadow Rider team actually has triple Faked Out. So you've 3 ways of setting up your Shadow Rider: Fake Out plus Nasty Plot, swap to your other Fake Out down, Fake Out again. And the Rillaboom in here, of course, gives you that grassy terrain to heal up your Shadow Rider, but also for your Miraidon matchup. Manshell, I believe James was actually adamant Manshell, because he was able to KO Pagos on stream in top 16 versus Rogov. Psychic plus Close Combat was able to kill the Bold Trapagos, so that maybe have a feeling that it was adamant. And Terra Ghost is actually really impressive. Early on in Reg G, a lot of these Manchells were Terra fighting, but Terra Ghost is really good versus Rogov because you can Wyguard away Terra Starstorm if they Terra, and if you Terra Ghost, you can be immune to that Starstorm if they don't Terra to maybe get around Wyguard, right? So really smart tech piece, which I think kind of solves the Pagos matchup in a way, because Pagos is a very uphill matchup for Shadow Rider, but James' tech with Manshell here was very impressive in his top 16 sets. Urshifu, very standard Scarf set for the most part. Scarf is usually just max attack, max speed. You need max speed to outspeed Shadow Rider. And then Rain Dance, which is a tech we didn't get to see on stream, but I did talk to him at UC about it, and he was saying that Rain Dance was for his Korai matchup and actually won him a game off it. So I think that's a really cool tech piece. Normally you see Aqua Jet because you're really clicking just the other moves anyway, but Aqua Jet is usually just for going around Thunderclap, which Rain Dance also does too, while also supporting Team versus Koraidon in its own way. Incin, this is your standard Goggles Wisp bet. I just went for the Impish set that lives Surging, enough speed just to speed creep other Incins, and yeah, usually Wisp Incin usually runs Impish, so very, very standard set. Next in top 8 is Ian's team, and Ian has a very standard Ice Rider balance team. Like standard Incin Among Us Ice Rider with Raging Bolt Ursh. Cornerstone on this slot's kind of interesting. Usually with these other 5 we saw Pelipper on this slot, but Cornerstone I think is a new adaptation in the current metagame because it's just kind of just being able to be immune to Sport's really good. Ogre Pond hits a lot. It hits Incineroar, which Ice Rider doesn't like. And for a set like this, it was actually Taunt instead of Woodhammer or Power Whip. And Taunt was really good at shutting down utility options like Smeargle, which you saw in his top 8 set. Ian actually was able to beat Alejandro and Swiss, but lost to him in Cut in the run back. And I think Taunt was a really good way of shutting him down. Just Alejandro, I think, adjusted better in that top 8 set. I went with a set that lived Surging Strikes. This one should actually be Jolly. I don't think you need to be adamant with this one. Jolly, just to hit other Orcaponds first. And I went with enough investment to live Mystic Water Surging most times. And yeah, really good supporting your Ice Rider like a Hidden Incin, Taunt to shut down utility like Smeargle and Among Us, and Follow Me to support your Ice Rider as well. Urshifu is your standard Choice Scarf set. At this point, like you're gonna see this a lot. I think Choice Scarf Ursh actually did really well this tournament. Not as much for Mystic, but Choice Scarf is really good to kind of keep the speed in your favor, especially when you don't have Tailwind. So to be able to kind of maybe clean up a chip down Shadow in the end game with Terra Water Surgeon is quite nice. Ice Rider here is just Terra Water, pretty standard set. Ice Rider Terra is going to be kind of dependent on the matches going to be good versus. Water has been kind of trending recently because I think there's been an uptick of Kyogre, so Water makes a lot of sense for the current metagame. Because there's really no forms of great speed control, I went with a very slow Calyrex, having enough speed def to take the hits you want, like Electric Drift and Astral most times, and then 4 speed just for other slow Ice Rider. Raging Bolt, this is your standard booster set with Terra Fairy. I went max speed for the Raging Bolt Mirror, and then Terra Fairy is really good for Zamazenta, which Ice Rider other struggles versus. So the combination of Among Us plus Terra Fairy Bolt should give you a pretty solid Zamazenta matchup for the most parts. Incin, I made it more on the Split Def side so you can live Sandsear from Landorus, because a team like this doesn't have a great Landorus switch in. There's no ground immunities, so I think having Split Def to take Sandsear is quite nice. And Among Us, again, like I mentioned, it's good for Zamazenta, it's for Zendoza matchup, and I just made this basically max bold so you can live Glacial Lance. At 7th place, we have Zach Minch, and he was running a Cali Shadow variant, not one we see often. I believe actually Mao used a very similar version of this at EYC. Same 6 with some different sets. I used the Heart Flame here for Spore and to abuse Tailwind. Because on a Tailwind team like this, you have Incineroar and such, I decided to make this Adamant to hit as hard as possible. This one lives Mystic Water Surging, and it's faster than Jolly Ursh, I believe. You have enough attack to KO Indeedee most times with Terra Cudgel, hitting that bump, and then yeah, the bulk is just really impressive still, while being able to hit as hard as possible as well. Whimsicott, standard Whim sets. This time you're up for Terra Dark for the Mirror Encore. Urshifu, Focus Sash. Focus Sash is just really consistent with Shadow Rider. Stellar Terror is really impressive for the Tropicos matchup, which is otherwise really, really hard. Cali Shadow, I believe this one also lists Mystic Water Surging while having enough speed. Max speed is just for the Mirror all around, and then just special attack to KO things with Psychic easier, and at +2 Astro you KO most things as well. Terra Dark is really good in the Mirror because you're immune to Psychic while still resisting Barrage, and you're also immune to Prankster Encore and Prankster Thunder Wave. So that's one benefit of Terra Dark over something like maybe a more standard Terra Normal Shadow Rider. Incineroar, standard Will-O-Wisp, Impish set, this one lives Surging. Just gave it enough bulk to live Surging, and then the dump is just for speed creep and a little bit of speed def on this one, just to have a bit more bulk all around, because a team like this is a bit more offensive, so I think having just a little bit more bulk on Incin might go a little while. Rage Bolt here, just go on max special attack again for the mirror and speed. To hit as hard as possible and max speed for the mirror. I think it's really good on bolts. Geo. Geo's a friend of mine. It was really cool to see him make top cut here. He has been using this team since Worlds, and he's been working with his group of Carlos Cabal, Luca Paz. His group kind of copied Juanma and a few others. I call him kind of Spanish Sun because a lot of Spanish players work on it, but Geo's also there in that group. And a lot of them have had good success with Day 2 in Worlds, top cutting multiple regionals and such with it as well. And it was cool to see Geo claim another top cut for Korai. Korai, I don't think did super impressive otherwise in this tournament. I think after Wolf won USC with it, people were more prepared for it, but people kind of forgot about Geo's version here. Not the Parasong one, but this is the more standard one that you tend to see. Korai with Shiyu and Fluttermane. This Korai is very bulky. This should be living Glacial Lance most times while still hitting the attack bump, and enough speed to outspeed the things you need to, because it's actually slower than Cornerstone. We saw this interaction on stream with Luca Paz, who ran the same team. So the idea behind this is that your Cornerstone can get a KO first with something, with Ivy Culture for example, and then you have a strong Flare Blitz to KO the other partner. Fluttermane just made it extremely bulky, having enough speed to outspeed the things you need. This should outspeed my Rory Moon I ran at London. And you have enough special tactic to take advantage of Beats of Ruin. That's really it. Chiyu, extremely bulky, just hitting enough special attack for that bump, having max speed for mirrored Chiyus, and then the rest in HP, just because you're Cover Cloak, just having some extra bulk to take, maybe Glacial Lance is better, maybe Close Combat from Ursh better. I believe this is Jolly CC. Region Bolt here, this made this really strong. I think with Protosynthesis, you won't be running a lot of special attack investment on it. 100 speed just for general speed creep, and then the rest is just in general dump and bulk. Raging Bolt is honestly your preferred set of whatever you want. You can go max speed for mirrors, you can go as bulky as possible if you don't want to play for mirror speed ties and such, then you can do whatever you want Bolt. But Bolt is just so good on these Korai comps just because that Protosynthesis, Thunderclap for Tailwind teams and such, and Terra Electric Bolt's also really good in the Miraidon matchup as well. Ditto. Ditto can go any side it wants. This one was just bold, but you can also go max speed Jolly to also have those faster transforms if you copy the wrong slot or whatever. Ditto is mostly for the Shadow Rider matchup. But yeah, really cool to see Korai do well again. Next is Abdullah or Sempra. Cool to see him back in the game. As you guys don't know, Sempra has a YouTube channel. Hasn't been posting much because he's in school, but he's back competing, and he came back huge with another top cut. If you guys don't know, Vancouver was his first regional win, his first tournament ever 2 years ago, and he was able to place top 16 this time. Losing a little bit unluckily to Alex, I heard, but cool result nonetheless. Heatran, this can look very similar to the spread I recreated for the last Heatran video. Just use the same spread here. You're going Quiet Nature because you want the heavy slam damage, and Magma Storm is really good for trapping. And again, like I mentioned in the video on Heatran before, the reason why these Pagos teams run Heatran is to have a Zamazenta matchup and to have a Korai matchup with that Flash Fire ability, and with Terra Fairy Wall Body Press, of course. Tropicos, very standard set. This is the bold set, very classic set right now. Just so you live close combat for Urshifu, you take hits all around better, and a Calm Mind anyway, you make up for that lack of damage. Insane, standard Rocky Helmet set, you live Surgeon Strikes, you whisk the physical attacks that Pagos don't like to really face. Cornerstone, again, I think that all these Cornerstones right now are lived for Mystic Water Surgeon, so that's why I went with that. Jolly Nature for other Ogre Pawns. The main difference of this one is that Sempra actually opted for Wood Hammer. So Wood Hammer might be weird or the sturdy, but it's just to allow you to get guaranteed knockout, because sometimes you can lose games off the power of accuracy. So I really do like that addition of Wood Hammer, just so, you know, I can always play around not missing, and that can win you a game. Sometimes it might lose you a game as well if you lose your sturdy, but you kind of need to navigate a situation knowing when it's right-click Wood Hammer in that case. Fluttermane just went enough bulk to live Surgeon Strikes most times, enough speed to outspeeding the things you need. With 192, you should be outspeeding most Flutter mains. I want a little bit faster than the ones I've shown before because this one's actually Thunder Wave. So with Thunder Wave, you want might be like a slightly faster Flutter, so you can T-Wave other Flutters before they can Icy Wind you, for example. On the one that won Victory Road though, and the one that did really well at UAC, it was actually Screamtail. Sempra opted for Flutter main because he didn't really like Screamtail. He liked how Flutter main was just faster, and it also gave you good disruption with Thunder Wave and Taunt, similar to Encore Disable. Like Taunt to shut down setup, while Encore can also shut down setup by locking them into it. Taunt just stops them from setup initially, right? So it's very similar. And Rillaboom here, it's just a different Miraidon matchup, and to, of course, give that leftovers and grassy terrain recovery on the top coast. Next is Joseph Ugarte, and he's back on his Ditto team that he ran at Worlds and at UIC. He just came up with a top 8 finish. Ditto is really cool in his teams for the Ice Rider and Zamazenta matchup. Bocarona also for the Zama matchup, but it's also really impressive, I think. You can also use it in a Miraidon mirror to swap in a Dazzling Gleam, which he has 4 Fairy Weeks, so having a natural resisted Deagling makes a lot of sense, and be able to Quiver Dance in front Dazzling Miraidon also makes a lot of sense. And it's a really great use of a Grimmsnarl setup, because with Reflecting Light Screen, it allows you to set Quiver Dance a lot easier. Miraidon on a team like this, I think he could just get away with Modest, just because with screens and Thunderwave support, that kind of makes up for your speed control. And bulky Miraidon behind screens is just almost unkillable. I think I just went with the Lucas spread, a very standard spread, but you can go even bulkier. I think the max HP Miraidon set would also work well with Reflecting Light Screen here. Grimmsnarl just went with Impish. This one went with Foul Play. Foul Play is to hit Ice Rider and such. I can also friend Shadow Rider as well. And Reflecting Light Screen, like I mentioned before, it's good for setting up for the Volcarona and also making Miraidon almost unkillable. Iron Hands here, I went with 28 speed because on his stream set, he thought that he was faster than the min speed Smeargle from Brian Collinson, or he thought it was min speed Smeargle, but Brian revealed that it wasn't. So min speed Smeargle hits 72 speed stat. So I just went with 74 to speed creep that and other things, speed creeping that Smeargle. 156 just to the tech bump, and the rest is just in general bulk. And also, one thing to note too is the Iron Hands has Volt Switch, which is really good for repositioning to get him a Miraidon safely. Urshifu here, pretty standard set for the most part, besides the Terra Poison and Swords Dance. I believe the Swords Dance here is for the Tropicos matchup, which otherwise could be tricky. The combination of Rillaboom plus Pagos can definitely wall out most of the team. So if you can have Swords Dance to kind of outpace Tropicos, it gives you a fighting chance in that matchup, which I find really, really cool. Next is James Evans. James Evans is running it back with Cali Shadow. He just top 16 London with his team. And it's a very standard build for the most part. Standard Ursh to just do hit Incineroar and stuff, have enough attack to kill Chien-Pao. A really good partner with Tornadus here. Tail and Surging, Rain Dance Surging. He opts for Terra Grass here, which I think makes a lot of sense to be immune to Spore, resist Rillaboom still, and you don't really need the damage from Water Terra because you have Chien-Pao plus Rain Dance. Cali Shadow, he opted for Terra Normal for the mirror. I went with a more bulky and slow Modest set based off the information we saw from stream. Ogerpon here, I made it Adamant because he's a Tailwind team. So with Tailwind, I would automatically assume that he doesn't need to be max speed. And I just gave it enough bulk to take Surging most times as well, because that's kind of the default thing for Cornerstone right now. Among Us, just having enough defense to live Glacial and Crash, and it's just your standard set for the Zamazenta matchup on Dozo. And Chien-Pao here is just to be a really great partner for Urshifu and also give James Evans an option to Miraidon, because on these teams you normally see a Rillaboom on the Cornerstone slot and such, but with no Rilla, having Chien-Pao to remove terrain gives you a fighting chance for that as well. Ryan ran Combine Ogre. I covered this team already before, so I'm not going to go over it too much. Basically, the general idea is that Kyogre can set up Combine, you have the double fake out to support it, kind of similar how Tropicos and Cali Shadow can play. You have Mungus to also support it, and you have Rory Moon to set up Tailwind and knock off for the Shadow Rider matchup. I'm pretty sure I showed these EVs before, so I'm not going to go over it too much, but Drum beating was also what Oliver ran at Birmingham to make finals, and to run drum beating, you go max speed Jolly to outspeed max speed Adam and Ursh. We don't usually see this team often anymore. I think it definitely fell off a little bit because I think it does have a struggle with Tropicals matchup, but Combine Kyogre is really good versus matchups like Cali Shadow and mostly Cali Ice. So yeah, really cool to see Kyogre do well again on a more old approach, because I think the approaches that have done recently well have been on more Talon builds. But Calm Mind can still work, assuming you pull your matchups and also land your O-Pulses. Ryan was actually eliminated to double O-Pulse miss in top 16, so that's like the one downside of running Calm Mind Kyogre. You have no access to Water Spout. Ian's team, I think I actually went over this team before as well. I did face this, actually, I went over this during my San Antonio run because I did play Ian. Ian's running the back with Terra Grass Shadow Rider, which is not a set we see often, but Terra Grass is basically the idea behind that is with Terra Grass Giga Drain, you can KO Urshifu with Life Orb. You also have Rillaboom to boost it up, so after you get Nasty Plot, like Nasty Plot plus Life Orb plus Terra Grass in Grassy Terrain, Giga Drain can KO a lot of things actually. A set like this just made it extremely bulky and fast enough for things you need to. I believe this also outspeeds the Timid Miraidon, and then enough special attack to get the KOs you need with Astro and Giga Drain. Rillaboom, I just mentioned what it does for your Miraidon matchup and to boost your Cali Shadow. So you're going a team like this is super annoying because Wide Guard can block Glacial Lens for your Terra Grass Cali. You have Spore to Spore targets that you don't like, and you also have the option to click Fake Out as well. Double Fake Out was set up, very classic. Urshifu, been using this Ursh set on a lot of these example teams so far. You outspeed other Smeargles, you have enough attack for Chenpao, and then the bulk is for Body Press, Sword of Ruin, and like Astral Barrage from Life Orb. Believe this one is actually, he actually ran, I'm pretty sure he ran Aqua Jet, not Taunt as well. But yeah, basically Taunt was on Tornadus, so you don't need Taunt Ursh. And yeah, Tornadus allows you to do Torn Ursh games with Talon with Surging. You can also Talon press Astral Barrage for the Mirror. And Taunt the shutdown setup is really important. A Clefairy on a team like this is just to set up the Calyrex even more. You follow me plus Nasty, you Fake Out plus Nasty. That's really the main game plans behind this team. You're going all on Calyrex, but a Calyrex does it so well because you have auto support for it. After use for the Trick Room matchup, and then Helping Hand is to boost the Calyrex even further. And I think Terra Ground is also another cool tech because you can be immune to Electric Drift from Miraidon. So versus Miraidon, they can't safely lock in Drift because you Terra Ground. Of course, they can't Draco you because you're already a Fairy type. Next here, we have the top 16 Ice Rider, which had Iron Ball Urshifu. Yeah, you heard me right, Iron Ball Urshifu. It was Stellar Terra as well. So with Iron Ball Ursh, I can automatically assume it's min speed. So you can underspeed other Ice Riders in Trick Room, guaranteed. And I don't really know why it's Iron Ball. I mean, I guess you go in all in the Trick Room mode because a lot of these Pokemon are so. Like the combination of Ferrig, Ice Rider, Incineroar, all very slow Pokemon, and Amoonguss. The only fast Pokemon he has on his team is his Scarflando here. I'm assuming it's only here just for the Miraidon matchup because otherwise, you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to set the Trick Room. And you use the Landorus early, or you use the end game to clean up Miraidon, I would assume. But the rest of the pieces I think we've seen a lot, like the combination Incin, Amoonguss, Ursh, Cali is very classic. Ferrograph is for the Cali Shadow matchup, also to block Fake Out for your Ice Rider, and you're able to click kind of the Helping Hand button. Helping Hand plus Glacial is a funny button to click always. Interesting take on Ice Rider. I'm actually really curious to see if the Iron Ball came up often. I'm sure there are some certain cases in Trick Room where maybe you want Ursh to move first in Trick Room, and then you can get the Glacial Lance boost after you get the damage surging off, and then you clean up them from there, but I'm not entirely so sure. Next is Rogov. It's literally just the same set that did well at UIC and it covers in the video before, Sempra Sempra. So I'm not gonna go over this one too much besides the different tech pieces. Rogov opts for going for Terra Blast on Heatran instead of Earth Power. Terra Blast is to hit Koraidon. And then he also had Power Whip on Ogerpon instead of Woodhammer. And this is just because, you know, the whole Sirius synergy, but obviously you have the chance of missing. But yeah, very strong team. I think that this is one of the strongest Pagos teams right now in the current format. You have two options from Pagos. We saw Specs in top 4, but if you want a more traditional way of playing the game, you can go for double Fake Out setup. Next is Joshua. I believe this is Joshua's first user Masters. He was a former NIC champion in the seniors division, and he's running it with Cali Ice. A really cool take on Cali Ice, actually. It's triple redirection Cali Ice on Rain. So you have to Terra Grass here, which makes a lot of sense with Pelipper. So Terra Grass to be immune to Spore, and you have Wide Guard plus Rain to be shutting down stuff like Heat Wave or Sun. Among Us here is really important as Kali Ice teams for the Dondozo and Zamazenta matchup. Indeed, to even set up the Ice Rider even more with that another Follow Me, and also to block Fake Out for your Scarf Urshifu, which makes a lot of sense. And Scarf Ursh pairs really nice with Pelipper. So you can set up Rain for the Ursh, maybe swap into Indeed to block Fake Out and to get KO Surging, which is really cool. Okerpon here is Follow Me, Ivy Cudgel Superpower counter. Actually, I'm not actually so sure if the counter was correct, but actually, was he actually counter? I copied this from Mouse Labs. Let me double check. I'm actually really curious if actually it's counter. His counter is actually crazy tech. No, he wasn't counter. I don't know why it's counter there. Okay, it's actually Spiky Shield. Counter would be insane. Like, it actually does get counter, but it's actually Spiky Shield. Sorry about that. But yeah, Spiky Shield, of course. Superpowers to hit Incineroar. And Ivy Cudgel is just its main grass stab because you're not Bullet Seed. I think Loaded Dice would also work here, but I think that with the Mungus here, you can just break the sashes from Urshifu, so you don't need Bullet Seed to KO Sash Ursh. Jean here ran Zacian, and this is actually a really odd team. There's a Landorus, which we've seen a lot before, but the main thing to go over is the Rotom Wash, the Okidogi, and Zacian. Pokemon we don't really see often. I think Torrent Ursh Landorus makes a lot of sense on most teams. I'm not sure why it's Okidogi, Rotom Wash, and Zacian here. Zacian is probably just for the Murata matchup, and Rotom Wash is for the quote-unquote Ice Rider matchup. But he did lose to Ice Rider, actually, in his top 32 set, and in a really crazy fashion, because I think that Rotom Wash took like 50% from Glacial Lance. So I'm a little skeptical of it. Like, I get why it's there. It's a quote-unquote answer to Ice Rider, but I think you're working a little bit too hard for it. But it definitely did work for him earlier in the Swiss rounds, just didn't really convert and cut. But yeah, cool to see Rotom Wash, but I think there's probably some better picks on that slot. Okidogi, I mean, we've seen Okidogi do like well before. I still think that's questionable. But it does get upper hand, and it does get Guard Dog, so it's good versus Instant, and you can block Fake Out. So it makes synergies with the Zacian as well. So if they bring Instant for the Zacian, you have Okidogi get basically your Pseudo Divine on it, and you beat Instant from there, which is kind of cool. But usually you would see something like Iron Hands, or you already have Urshifu in that slot, but double fighting means you have a lot of Instant deterrent. Urshifu here is this Choice Scarf. I think, yeah, Choice Scarf had a really good conversion rate in Top Cut. Like, I don't think there was actually any Mystic Water at all so far, so that's kind of an adaptation to see. This probably has to do maybe with the Okerpon's Living Surgeon now for Mystic. And yeah, Zacian here is your Terra Water set. I think most commonly is either Terra Fairy with Swords Dance or Terra Ground Blast for the Murata matchup. But Terra Water is a good neutral Terra all around to resist Glacial Lance still, even when you Terra. And you also resist stuff like Water Spout for Kyogre, which is probably another important piece. Next is a pretty standard Ice Rider team. We've seen this build a lot earlier in the format. Like standard Bolt, Kali Ice on Rain, believe top forward Indianapolis in the very first Reggie tournament from last season. And the only adaptations really for a build like this, it's Terra Fairy Ice Rider and like Mental Herb Mungus. But every other set we have seen before. Like, I made the instant here max speed with Taunt to shut down other instant, which is really important for Ice Rider. You also have that fast Fake Out to set up Ice Rider as well, which is quite nice. Mental Herb Mungus probably has to do with the adaptation of people running Taunt on Urshifu or Taunt on Galvatel now. So having a Mental Herb to shut down Taunt is really nice with a Spore. And yeah, a Fairy Ice Rider, I think, is the new adaptation. I think when Burns was running this team, he was running Terra Grass or Terra Water or Terra Fire, something like that. But now Terra Fairy is mostly just for the Murata matchup, which I think that this team beforehand did struggle versus. But yeah, this team has strong fundamentals. And it's kind of cool to see like teams, like old teams from before are starting to shine a bit more because they have a place in the metagame now, or the metagame is so wide where honestly anything can work. So it kind of shows how Reg G is going right now. Next at 19th, we have Emmanuel on a hard Trickroom Kali Ice team. Standard Scarf Ape set with Coaching and Final Gambit. It's hard to cover both. You can lead Annihilate to deter Incineroar for Kali Ice. And if they lead Incin, you can close combat it. If they don't, you can click Coaching or Final Gambit their slots. Ursaluna for the Kali Shadow matchup. It also pairs really nice with Ice Rider, Trick Room, and yeah, you can click buttons with it basically. Made it min speed because it's a hard Trick Room team. You can kind of mix around the speed interactions. Like realistically, you can also make the Ursaluna slower than Ice Rider, so you can have Hyper Voice into Glacial and get a boost off there. But I just kind of make it both min speed, but you guys can change it to your liking based off that. Indeedee on here, again, to set up the Ice Rider also gives you another way to shut down Shadow Rider. The combination of double normal plus AV Instant is very strong versus Ice Rider. I mean, actually, it's strong versus Ice Rider too, AV Instant, but they're all good versus Shadow Rider. Cornerstone here, this made a max speed, max attack. I don't think this one really needs to live surging. I think it could, but on a team like this, you're probably just using it to damage turret or to move as fast as possible and then deal damage, and then follow me like Will-O-Wisp or Spore and such. So I don't think living the surgeon is nearly as important because you kind of want to get KO'd actually. Because it'd be awkward if your Ogerpon didn't get KO'd by Urshifu, and then you couldn't get your second Trick Room Sweeper, and you have Ogerpon in Trick Room, and it's in a bad spot, right? So that's why I made it faster with no bulk. So you get the double Trick Room setup basically after you move Ogerpon. So Blood Moon comes in, you Blood Moon plus Ice right in the field instead of Ogerpon plus Calyrex in Trick Room, which is a bit more awkward. Next we Jose on Ting Zama. Really interesting variant. We don't usually see Zama Tinglu, with Pelipper at least. Like we saw Zama Tinglu Dozo do really well at UIC and the Global Challenge, but like not with these Pokemon. Like Tinglu, Screamtail, and Ditto are all unique picks on Zamazenta, and I think the Ditto is just here for the Zama mirror, because you don't have Among Us, and Zamazenta here is also kind of good mirror because he's actually Iron Defense. Iron Defense means you can outbook other Zamazentas. You have substitute for Among Us, which is quite nice. Screamtail here is also very disruptive at Encore Disable. You can Encore Fake Outs. You can disable other body presses from Zamazenta for the mirror. So you're going to actually, all your damage is actually on the Zamazenta, which is actually really interesting. So very setup heavy team, I think, for Zamazenta's case. But I think it does work if you're facing especially a lot of physically oriented teams, because there's very little ways to hit the Zamazenta. Raging Bolt, standard AV set. This one's actually up for Terra Bug, which I think makes sense. I think Terra Bug's a pretty cool typing right now. On stuff like Raging Bolt Instant, like Wolf Glick won UIC Terra Bug Instant. Raging Bolt has similar weaknesses in Cineroar, so Terra Bug has heavy resistance to that. Quite nice, resisting ground and such. Tinglu is an interesting Zama, but like if you're going Iron Defense, having a Vessel Rune to also make the special attacks weaken for it is quite nice. And Pelipper is here, I'm pretty sure, for Karada matchup, which otherwise Zamazenta is weak to. Next we got Joshua on Rain Zamazenta. I went over this team already before. This top 32 San Antonio, this made finals at the Puerto Rico special event, so I'm not going to go over this one too much. I also faced this at San Antonio and at UIC in that building group, so kind of funny. The only changes that this person made was they made the Urshifu Terra Ghost instead of Terra Water, just to avoid fake outs. But yeah, the EVs are very straightforward. There's actually EVs that I got from Eric's Twitter. I'll link it down below. He posted his pace after he made finals of that special event. And yeah, very standard Zama team. I feel like there's a few ways you can build Zama right now. Like we saw Zama Rain earlier. I just showed the last team. You can also see Zamazentas on Chi-Yu Flutter variants, which is the more common sets we usually see. Next we have Grimmsnarl, Kyogre, Wo Chien. So this is kind of a throwback to NIC when I ran Wo Chien with Xilang. Xilang was able to top 8 with Wo Chien Kyogre. I think that was kind of like the birth of that team. But this is a bit of a different take because the main thing to note is this Kyogre is actually leftovers Calm Mind instead of the Assault Vest set we saw at NIC. So I think leftovers Calm makes a lot of sense too because you double Fake Out like we saw with Ryan. But this one has Grimmsnarl as well, and you have Wo Chien support. So this is going all in the Kyogre. I think a team like this can definitely struggle if Kyogre goes down. You lack a lot of damage, but you have so many ways to negate damage. Wolf, Tablets of Ruin, Wolf Screens, Wolf Reflect, Wolf Will-O-Wisp, and a double Pollen Puff to support as well. So really defensive team. I feel like this is a really annoying team to face if you're, especially an Ice Rider team. I think Ice Rider probably struggle versus this a lot. But something like Marino, I think can give some issues, and maybe and I think Terrapagos has been annoying for Kyogre in general, so those are probably the main weaknesses of this team like this. But cool take on it. Very passive, but very, very annoying. So much bulk. Next we got Enrique on a similar Ice Rider team we kind of covered earlier. The main difference is that there's a Rillaboom here instead of Raging Bolt, but that same Pelipper Ursh core with Among Us and Sin. The Calyrex here opt for Terra Fairy. I think this is the more standard set we'd see on a lot of these Rain teams so far. They're either Terra Fairy or Terra Grass for the most part on Rain. Yeah, I'm not going to go over this one too much besides the Rillaboom. I'm guessing the Rillaboom was just here just to have better options than Miraidon. So the combination of Terra Fairy, Calyrex, plus the Real Boom to shut down Electric Terrain makes the Mirai matchup a lot more playable. So it makes sense to me. And the final team in top cuts was a variant of the Yanagi 6 we saw that top for EUIC. It's the same 6, just some different sets. He opted for Never Melt Ice on Calyrex. So with Never Melt Cali, usually you don't need to run a whole lot of attack. I made it 44 attack to have a little bit more attack after the bump. Give it enough bulk to live Timid Drift, and then just be creeping auto Calyxes because you have that Never Melt Ice. You can kind of afford to have more stats elsewhere because you don't need as much attack because of Never Melt Ice, right? Flutter main made it fast and strong. I think having a little special attack makes a lot of sense, especially if you're Dazzling Gleam with Terra Fairy. It also makes a lot of sense with Beads of Ruin. So Terra Fairy Dazzling can actually pick up KOs. The Chi-Yu on this set here is Covert Cloak. The one that top 4 UAC was actually Choice Scarf, but I think Covert Cloak makes a lot of sense just for fake out spam, which I think Ice Rider is a little bit weak to double fake out otherwise. Among Us, I think this is just so needed right now in Ice Rider comps. It's just so good versus Zamazenta and Dondozo. This one actually opts for Clear Smog, so you're even better versus Dondozo if you do face it. Ogerpon here, I'm making this also live the Mystic Water Surging. I think Ogerpon and Kali Ice will always have a lot of success because the synergy they have together. And yeah, Ivy Culture to hit Incineroar, which I think otherwise Instant could be a little bit tough for this team. So having 2 ways to hit Instant with Ogerpon and Ursh is pretty good. He also opted for Choice Scarf Ursh instead of that Focus Sash set. I think Choice Scarf here is just to have another form of speed control outside that Flutter and another form of revenge killing. So I think Scarf is cool here as well. But Focus Sash will be better to kind of abuse Trick Room. And yeah, that's it for top cut teams. For the rest of the video, we're kind of going over some teams outside of cuts. We saw a lot of interesting picks in top cuts, and we also saw a lot of things that were a little bit out of cut. Tehran came from the UK with his EUIC team. He just ran the standard Miraidon, so not much to really talk about, but kind of cool to see him invade and sadly miss out here. We have Williams' team, which is actually really unique. He actually knocked out Alex Underhill for day 1, and this is a really strange take on Koraidon, right? We're talking about how Koraidon hasn't seen a whole lot of use in top cut. It was just really Geo. But William here having another unit take with that Scale Shot set. Last time we saw Scale Shot was at San Antonio, which makes sense of killing Focus Sash Mons. And because you don't have Clear Amulet, he actually opted for the King Gambit here with Defiant. So if they ever bring Instant versus a team like this, they have the Covert Cloak Walking Weight, which is the immune to Fake Out. They have King Gambit Defiant, and of course they have Koraidon to hit a Collision Course. So this is actually a really cool take on the team. Volcarona is also really good for a Zamazenta matchup, and the Life Orb Flutter is very unconventional, but I think it makes sense as well, being able to switch up your moves, and just having that extra damage over Life Orb is quite strong. So pretty cool take on Koraidon. Actually, I actually think this team might has some decent matchups. It might struggle versus maybe some variants of Kali Ice, particularly Kali Ice Cornerstone. But for other teams like Zamazenta, Pagos, and Kyogre, I can actually see this doing pretty well. So just one game away from cut, and really cool to see it do well here. Scrolling down a bit more, I mean, a lot of teams are pretty conventional. Like we've seen these Pagos teams, these different variants of Ice Rider Trick Room, which we saw mid-finals, Zacian, Regidrago, which we saw do at San Antonio. I mean, probably the most unique team as well here to talk about is the Tinkaton team that actually we saw win in day 1. And I think AV Tinkaton makes some sense here because like a team like this struggles versus Miraidon otherwise because you only have Landorus. So the combination of Landorus with Tinkaton means you can fake out even through Armor Tail. You're immune to Draco and resist Dazzle, and Electric Drift probably doesn't KO you with that Terra Grass with Assault Vest. So cool take on Shadow Rider offense. Feint is also really cool tech with that Shadow Rider because you can feint away a White Guard, and you have Astral Barrage to hit it through there as well. And Focus Sash is a set that we've been seeing a little bit more. We saw Focus Sash do well at UIC with Kyle Livinghouse, and this one is a pretty similar set with that Terra Girls Astral Barrage. It's just missing Encore. And scrolling down a bit more, there's not really a whole lot to mention. Aaron Brock with Bundle and Treads is kind of interesting. We did see Treads do well at EYC, but this one has Bundle instead of Ursh, which makes sense. I think Bundle is quite cool for extra forms of speed control, and also ways to Encore Tropicos, which is sometimes rough for Pagos. I mean, rough for Miraidon as the Pagos player. It's good for them. Actually, didn't talk about Moltres. Moltres is definitely a strange pick. Moltres Zamazenta is not a thing we see often, but I think that Snow actually was running Moltres in an online tournament at Japan Tour one time. So I think that's where the idea came from. And the idea behind Moltres, I think, is just for Zacian and mirrors, which is kind of cool. It's really interesting set with Tailwind as well. So you have kind of a really strong fast mode, not just with the Flutter main. You Tailwind plus Urshifu and Tailwind plus Landorus. Very similar to the San Antonio team, of course, with that kind of combo. And I actually think Landorus makes a lot of sense with Zacian because you can Y-Guard away Astro or Glacial away from it. So kind of cool tech here. I'm a little bit unsure of Moltres. I wonder if there's any better Tailwind setters. But for the typing, I guess it makes sense. And as we go down, a lot of more standard teams besides, I mean, there's a Hoodra for some reason, Galarian, Gudra, and this one actually another Lunala set, but it's not the one we saw that win. The one that won was with the more expanding forest Meteor Beam set, which I think is probably the best set. We saw Brian Collins' Day 2 Worlds with that same set as well. The comment sets I think make sense as well on Rain in particular, but at that point I think you're better off using Kali Shadow in my opinion. And Gudra Suian, I think, is mostly just for having a more refined matchup into Kali Ice, because with Sap Sipper plus Iron Defense or Shelter, same thing. You just sit in front of it, plus Among Us plus Kali Ice. You can also sit in front of Zacian pretty well with that. So definitely a cool tech, but very, very interesting to see. Gudra's not a Pokemon we see every day. And let's go further. We see Talonflame Maraudon. We saw that almost top cut NIC last year, which is kind of cool. Some other weird ticks like Rhyperior. Rhyperior got 49th. Not a Pokemon we see every day, but we did see Rhydon do really well at one regional. So I think it's for a similar reason. Just the whole idea behind Lightning Rod for Miraidon and Terra Fairy means you wall Miraidon completely, basically, besides the Gleam. And yeah, that's really it. We saw Groudon Garganacl do well here, which actually was a combo we've seen before. It's just the whole idea is like Y-Guard for like a niche Y-Guard mon. Honestly, like niche Y-Guard can work on almost any team. And everything else we have seen before. We see my team here with Olivia, and yeah, that's really it with niche teams and stuff that we're still in day 2. So yeah, Vancouver is definitely one of the more interesting regionals we have in NA so far. A lot of interesting new teams have shown up. Do I think that this will develop the meta in a certain way for Stockholm and such and Atlanta? I'm not so sure. I think Lunala is more for a meta call. I think Lunala definitely struggles versus teams like Rillaboom and Tropicos. Basically, I mentioned that, yeah, he picked this team mostly for tournament because he knew the Rillaboom usage would be low and he was correct, and he won with it. So kudos to him for coming with a strong team and making Lunala work. Very, very, very cool to see. For the rest of the restricted, I think that with Lunala winning, I still think every other restricted is still strong. Lunala is more in the niche end, but probably have to be on your prep list now. So realistically, you want to be prepped for all the horses, Miraidon, Tropico Zama, the weather Pokemon, maybe outside Groudon. Groudon kind of fell off a little bit, but it's still kind of there. And now Lunala and Zacian are sort of there. Definitely like Pokemon that can definitely top cut and maybe shown to be winning, but you definitely need the right schedule and luck for it. But yeah, that's gonna be it today for today's meta recap. Hope you guys enjoyed. And if you have any more questions on these teams and such, feel free to let me know, or any more ideas for videos. I'm gonna have again some more content coming out this week and next week, ideally. But yeah, that'll be it for today, and I'll see y'all later. Goodbye.